His best friend made the varsity team. Michael Jordan didn't. His classmates celebrated their success. Michael Jordan hid his failure. They moved forward. He felt frozen. But what Michael Jordan did with that humiliation separated him from everyone else and proved that greatness isn't given, it's forged in the fires of rejection. It was September 1978 at Emsley A. Laney High School in Wilmington, North Carolina. 15-year-old Michael Jeffrey Jordan was a skinny sophomore who stood 5 feet 10 inches and weighed barely 150 pounds. He had spent the entire summer practicing basketball, dreaming of making the varsity team and playing under the Friday night lights that made high school athletes into local heroes. Michael wasn't just hoping to make the team, he was expecting it. He'd played basketball since he was 8 years old. He'd spent countless hours in his backyard shooting on the rusty hoop his father had installed. He'd watched every NBA game he could find on television, studying the moves, imagining himself making those same plays. Most importantly, Michael had confidence. Perhaps too much confidence for a sophomore who hadn't yet proven himself at the high school level. The varsity basketball tryouts at Laney High School lasted 3 days. Coach Clifton "Pop" Herring ran a demanding program, and making his varsity team as a sophomore was rare, but not impossible. Michael knew he had to prove himself against older, stronger, more experienced players. From the first drill, Michael played with intensity that surprised even himself. He was quicker than most of the juniors and seniors trying out. His jump shot, perfected through thousands of summer practice sessions, was smooth and consistent. His defensive instincts were sharp. By the end of the second day of tryouts, Michael was confident he'd done enough. He'd outplayed several juniors who had been on the team the previous year. He'd held his own against the seniors. In his mind, making the varsity team wasn't a question. It was a certainty. His best friend, Leroy Smith, had also tried out. Leroy was taller than Michael, about 6 feet 6 inches, and had the kind of height that coaches loved. But Michael believed his skills were superior, his work ethic stronger, his desire more intense. On the third and final day of tryouts, Coach Herring told all the players that the roster would be posted outside the gym the next morning. Michael went home that night and could barely sleep, imagining walking into school as a varsity basketball player, wearing that coveted uniform, playing in front of crowds. He had no idea his world was about to shatter. The next morning, Michael arrived at school early. A crowd had already gathered outside the gym where Coach Herring had posted 2 lists, one for the varsity team, one for the junior varsity team. Michael pushed through the crowd, his heart racing with anticipation. He scanned the varsity list from top to bottom, looking for his name. It wasn't there. He read the list again, slower this time, thinking he must have missed it. His eyes moved carefully over every name, every number, every position. His name wasn't on the varsity list. Confused, Michael looked at the junior varsity list. There it was, Michael Jordan, junior varsity. At first, he thought it must be a mistake. There was no way Coach Herring had cut him from varsity. He'd played too well. He'd proven himself. This had to be an error. But then Michael saw Leroy Smith's name on the varsity list, and reality crashed down on him like a physical weight. His best friend had made the team. He hadn't. The other students were talking excitedly, congratulating those who made varsity, consoling those who didn't make either team. But nobody seemed to notice Michael standing there, frozen, staring at the lists as if willing his name to appear on the varsity roster through sheer force of desire. "Jordan, you made JV. That's still good for a sophomore," someone said, trying to be encouraging. But Michael couldn't hear encouragement. He could only hear failure. Making junior varsity wasn't the dream. Playing in front of small crowds in afternoon games wasn't why he'd spent his summer perfecting his jump shot. Wearing the white and blue JV uniform instead of the prestigious varsity colors felt like being told he wasn't good enough. Worse than not making the team was watching Leroy Smith, his best friend, his neighbor, the guy he'd beaten one-on-one countless times in backyard games, celebrate making varsity while Michael stood there holding a JV roster sheet. Michael didn't congratulate Leroy. He couldn't. The words wouldn't come out. Instead, Michael walked away from the crowd, away from the celebration, away from the gym that had just become a monument to his failure. He went to the bathroom, locked himself in a stall, and cried. Not quiet tears, not dignified sadness. Michael Jordan, the kid who would become the greatest basketball player in history, sobbed with the kind of pain that only comes from having your dreams crushed in public. Michael didn't go to his classes that morning. He couldn't face his classmates, couldn't bear the thought of people asking about tryouts, couldn't stand the idea of explaining why he'd been cut when everyone knew he'd expected to make varsity. He walked out of school and began the 3-mile walk home. Every step felt heavy, like his legs were made of concrete. The September sun was hot, but Michael barely noticed. His mind was replaying every moment of tryouts, trying to understand where he'd failed. Was he not tall enough? Leroy was taller, and Leroy made the team. Was he not strong enough? He was skinnier than most players, that was true. Was his shot not good enough? But he'd made most of his attempts during tryouts. The questions spiraled in his mind, each one leading to the same devastating conclusion. He wasn't good enough. Coach Herring had looked at Michael Jordan and decided he didn't deserve to be on the varsity team. When Michael finally reached his house, his mother Dolores was home. She took one look at her son's face and knew something terrible had happened. "Baby, what's wrong?" Michael couldn't speak. He just shook his head and went straight to his room. Dolores Jordan followed her son upstairs. She found him lying face down on his bed, his body shaking with sobs. She sat down next to him and placed her hand on his back, not saying anything, just letting him know she was there. After several minutes, Michael finally spoke, his voice muffled by the pillow. "I didn't make the team, Mom. Coach Herring cut me. Leroy made it, but I didn't. I'm not good enough." Dolores Jordan had raised 5 children, and she knew that what she said in this moment would matter more than any words she'd ever spoken to her son. She could comfort him, tell him it didn't matter, assure him there were other things in life besides basketball. But Dolores Jordan understood her son. She knew that basketball wasn't just a hobby for Michael. It was his identity, his passion, his dream. And she knew that protecting him from this pain wouldn't help him grow from it. "Michael Jeffrey Jordan," she said firmly, "look at me." Michael rolled over, his face wet with tears, his eyes red and swollen. "You're right," Dolores said. "You're not good enough." Not yet. Michael looked at his mother in shock. He'd expected comfort, not agreement with his worst fear. "That coach looked at you and decided you weren't ready for varsity basketball," Dolores continued. "And you have a choice now. You can accept his judgment and let it define you, or you can use his judgment to fuel you." "Baby, I need you to answer a question honestly," Dolores said. "Do you believe Coach Herring made the right decision?" Michael wanted to say no. He wanted to insist that the coach was wrong, that he'd made a mistake, that Michael deserved to be on that varsity team. But something made him pause and really think about the question. Had he really been better than every player who made the team? Had he truly proven he was ready for varsity competition? Or had he been so focused on his expectation of making the team that he hadn't honestly evaluated his own performance? "I don't know," Michael finally admitted. "Then your job is to make sure that next year, when tryouts come around again, there is no doubt. Your job is to work so hard, improve so much, and prove yourself so completely that Coach Herring would be a fool not to put you on varsity." Dolores stood up to leave, then turned back to her son with one final piece of wisdom that would echo through his entire life. "Michael, everybody gets told no at some point. The difference between people who succeed and people who don't is what they do after hearing that no. Some people let it stop them. Champions let it start them." Michael didn't sleep much that night. He lay in bed, replaying his mother's words, thinking about what Coach Herring's rejection really meant. By the time the sun rose the next morning, something had shifted in Michael. The pain of being cut hadn't disappeared. It still hurt, and it would hurt for years. But the pain had transformed into something else. Fuel. Michael got out of bed at 5:30 a.m., put on his sneakers, and went to the outdoor court at the nearby park. The morning air was cool, the court was empty, and Michael began to practice. He didn't practice casually. He didn't shoot around leisurely. He attacked that court like it had personally wronged him. 200 jump shots before breakfast, dribbling drills until his hands ached, defensive slides until his legs burned. Every movement, every shot, every drill was infused with the memory of seeing his name on the junior varsity list instead of the varsity roster. And Michael made himself a promise. He would never feel this way again. He would never give a coach a reason to cut him. He would work harder than anyone else, improve more than anyone else, and prove that the kid who got cut from varsity would become unstoppable. Michael Jordan played junior varsity basketball his sophomore year, and he played with a fury that shocked everyone who watched him. He averaged over 25 points per game in JV competition, dominating opponents with an intensity that seemed excessive for afternoon games played in front of small crowds. But Michael wasn't playing against his JV opponents. He was playing against the memory of being cut from varsity. Every basket was proof that Coach Herring had been wrong. Every victory was evidence that Michael Jordan belonged on a bigger stage. His JV coach quickly realized he had something special. "Michael plays like every game is the championship," the coach told Dolores Jordan. "I've never seen a sophomore with that kind of drive." What the coach didn't understand was that for Michael, every game was personal. Every opponent represented the kids who made varsity when he didn't. Every basket was revenge against the humiliation he'd felt standing outside that gym, reading his name on the wrong list. After junior varsity games ended, Michael would sneak into the gym and watch the varsity team practice. He studied every drill, memorized every play, and imagined himself on that court, proving his worth. Coach Herring noticed Michael watching and, recognizing the dedication, allowed him to practice with the varsity team occasionally. Those practice sessions became battles. Michael played against the varsity players, including Leroy Smith, with a physicality and competitiveness that made everyone uncomfortable. "Michael plays like he's trying to hurt somebody," one varsity player complained. Coach Herring understood. "He's not trying to hurt you. He's trying to prove I was wrong about him." Between his sophomore and junior years, something remarkable happened to Michael Jordan's body. He grew 4 inches, adding size and strength to his already explosive athleticism. But more importantly, that year of being cut, that year of playing JV while his friends played varsity, that year of carrying rejection and humiliation, it forged something inside Michael that was more valuable than any physical gift. It gave him an edge, a hunger, a refusal to accept failure that would define his entire career. When tryouts came around for his junior year, Michael Jordan walked into that gym as a different person than the confident but unproven sophomore who had been cut 12 months earlier. He was taller, stronger, more skilled, and most importantly, he was driven by a fury that made him unstoppable. Coach Herring put Michael on the varsity roster without hesitation, and Michael Jordan, the kid who had cried in a bathroom stall after being cut, became the star of the team that had rejected him. Decades later, after winning 6 NBA championships, 5 MVP awards, and becoming universally recognized as the greatest basketball player in history, Michael Jordan was asked about the source of his legendary competitiveness. His answer was always the same. "I was cut from my high school varsity team my sophomore year. That pain never left me. Every time I stepped onto a court, I was still that 15-year-old kid trying to prove Coach Herring wrong." Jordan kept a list in his locker throughout his professional career. It was the varsity roster from his sophomore year at Laney High School. The list, his name wasn't on. He looked at it before games as a reminder of where he came from, of what rejection felt like, of why he could never let his guard down or accept being second best. "People think my competitive drive came from wanting to be great," Jordan later explained. "But it really came from not wanting to feel the way I felt when I was cut. That humiliation, that sense of not being good enough, I spent my entire career making sure I never felt that way again. Coach Clifton Herring passed away in 2012, and Michael Jordan spoke at his funeral. In his eulogy, Jordan said something that shocked many people who knew the story of him being cut. Coach Herring didn't just make a roster decision when he cut me from varsity. He gave me the greatest gift anyone ever gave me. He showed me what rejection feels like, and that feeling became my fuel. If he'd put me on varsity that year, I might have been satisfied. I might have thought I'd made it. But by cutting me, he lit a fire that never went out. Jordan went on to thank Coach Herring for having the wisdom, whether intentional or not, to let a talented but unproven sophomore experience failure at a young age, when that failure could either destroy him or define him. Coach Herring taught me that the word no isn't the end of anything, it's the beginning of everything. Thank you, Coach, for telling me no. Thank you for making me prove you wrong. Thank you for creating the chip on my shoulder that became 6 championship rings. The story of Michael Jordan being cut from his high school basketball team has become legendary, not because of the rejection itself, but because of what Jordan did with that rejection. He transformed humiliation into motivation, failure into fuel, and no into not yet. Every successful person has their version of being cut from the team. The job they didn't get, the relationship that ended, the dream that was rejected, the opportunity that went to someone else. The question isn't whether we face rejection. The question is what we do with it. Michael Jordan chose to let rejection reveal what he was made of, rather than letting it define what he would become. He chose to prove doubters wrong rather than proving them right. He chose to use pain as fuel rather than letting pain paralyze him. And that choice, made by a 15-year-old kid crying in his bedroom after being cut from the varsity basketball team, changed sports history forever. If this story of rejection transformed into greatness moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who's facing their own version of being cut from the team. Someone who needs to hear that failure isn't final, it's fuel. Have you ever been told no and used it to drive your success? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more true stories about how our greatest setbacks become our most powerful comebacks.